Hello, everybody. Back again with another post on Everyday Feminism, and this one features a nice little comic that we can look at. 4 unique struggles that queer and trans people of color have to deal with. Because somehow their unique struggles are more unique and more important than everybody else. I mean, let's face it, there are many different types of people in the world, and even on an individual level, our struggles are usually unique to us. I mean, clearly we can relate to other people on certain things, but being you is a unique experience in itself. The experiences and struggles of LGBTQIA plus people of color, or as I like to call it, the identity alphabet soup, even wow, QT POC. Okay, so that I guess that's queer trans people of color. Got to have a special label for everything. Are often forgotten, especially when people fail to recognize what life is like at the intersection of those identities. What did they come to a stop sign? Now they don't know which way to turn. That's why this comic's message is so important. Learn about the impact of factors like gendered racism, fetishization, and violence targeting queer people of color, and you'll understand why we need to address how various forms of oppression multiply each other. Now they're going to try to bring mathematical equations into this. This will also help you understand how to support LGBTQIA plus people of color. Wow, that is such a mouthful. It's like a mouthful of gender fluid. Starting with the reminder to just trust us when we tell our stories. You can't trust everybody just because of their identity. I mean, that's stupid. Trust people that you know are of good character. Don't trust somebody based on their gender or their sexual orientation. That is retarded. Oh, and sorry, ableist language. But apparently this statement has been said with love from the editors of Everyday Feminism. So let's check out this comic. Oh, right off the bat, amazing artwork here. When Professor Kimberly Crenshaw coined the term intersectionality back in the 80s, she was creating language to help discuss the experience of Black womanhood. The idea is that Blackness and womanhood are two different streets, and when those streets intersect, you get a unique address and an experience like no other. Yeah, you just go down to your local post office and show them your black card and your woman card, and they'll give you a unique address. But once again, an identity-based experience is unique to just about everybody. I mean, okay, so being a black woman is different. Okay, but so is being, say, a Spanish woman or a Mexican or woman, Asian woman. You know, they're all identities that are unique in some way. Likewise, when LGBTQI, I almost always stumble when I try to read that, identities intersect with POC identities, the experience and struggles will be different from those of folks who only live on one of those streets. Well, how can you live on multiple streets? Must be that whole multi-system individual thing, huh? That said, here are just 4 of the unique struggles faced by people who live on the corner of QT and POC. This whole address thing that's real cute. Okay, 1. Whiteness is a shield that POC don't have. So the whiteness shield. I really wonder what the stats on that are. In the RPG of oppression. In all oppressed groups, that include white or white passing members, which is essentially all of them. The white ones are the least marginalized. It's no different in queer communities. How are you going to make that leap? How are you going to tell somebody else how difficult their life is or how difficult their struggles are? You are basically saying, listen to me when I tell you my struggles, but yet I'm going to tell you how valuable yours are, or I'm going to tell you that my struggles are worse than yours in some way. For instance, did you know that 4 out of 5 LGBTQ homicide victims are POC? I did not know that, and I'm not even sure if it's true, but even if it is, homicide victims don't need to be broken down into categories. Murder is a terrible thing, regardless of who it happens to. And let the record show that 3 out of 5 victims were black specifically. And 50% of all victims were transgender women of color. Once again, the identity of the person killed is not more important than the fact that they were just murdered. I don't think that anybody who is white that's in danger of being murdered just pulled up their whiteness shield and said, hold on, I'm white, you can't kill me, and then somehow they lived. That's not how it works. 2, QTPOC don't get to go to queer safe spaces and just be queer. What, do they go to queer safe spaces and get to be straight? I don't... And what is a queer safe space? So here we have, want to dance with me, chicka? And that is the most awkward arm positioning I've ever seen in my life. I'm tired of being told I'm someone's fetish. It's bad enough when straight people do it, but when it happens in queer spaces, it makes me feel like I have nowhere to go. How are you being fetishized? She's just asking you if you want to dance. It's hard to feel queer solidarity after hearing, sorry, I'm just not into Asians for the 100th time. Sorry, I'm just not into Asians. Now that is a statement you will barely ever see spoken on the internet. In fact, the only time I've ever seen that said on the internet is from Asian women. They'll say, sorry, I'm just not into Asian guys. Just my preference. I wish I had some examples to pull up right now, but I've definitely seen it a lot, especially on dating websites. I'm too busy defending my gender presentation wherever I am to even want to date anybody these days. Doesn't that say more about you than the people that you are defending your gender presentation to? And oh my God, this poor girl, she's like, she's missing an arm, and she has to stand there and listen to this crap. Femmes of color are routine. What the hell is a femme of color? Are routinely invalidated as mean, tough, aggressive, or manly because of gendered racism, especially when we speak up for ourselves. How do you gender racism? Are you saying that somebody would just be racist against black women but not black men? With all that, on top of being trans, it feels like I can never be femme enough. Well, why do you have to be? Shouldn't you be happy with your own identity and the way you want to present yourself? It doesn't matter what other people think. Granted, there are exceptions. I mean, if somebody is actively trying to harm you because of your identity, then that's a problem, but that's what the laws are for. 3, issues specific to QTPOC are often deemed niche and divisive. I wonder why. It's still not okay to appropriate African American Vernacular English, or AAVE, just because the words being used are associated with black queers. Every time I bring that up, I get accused of being a racist myself for wanting to split up queers by race. Because basically you're telling people what language they're allowed to use based on the color of their skin. I don't know how you don't see the hypocrisy in that, but I'm sure it has something to do with multi-layers of oppression. Meanwhile, not taking the concerns and experiences of QPOC seriously is a way of splitting us up by race. What else can you call it when a white person's autonomy, queer or otherwise, comes at the expense of POC liberation? Why is it that POC liberation comes at the expense of everybody else? You can have equality. Everybody can have equality, and it doesn't have to take anything away from anybody else. 4, QTPOC have their narratives dominated by white American colonialism. They always phrase it in these terms that make everything sound so much more important and problematic than it actually is. People of color includes many ethnic groups who recognize more than two genders, which complicates the meanings of American words like trans and queer for many POC. It shouldn't be complicated. I mean, if you are part of American culture, regardless of your ethnic background, then people are going to more commonly understand the American terminology than the one that is exclusive to your culture. Let's see, Hijra, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right, a gender recognized in South Asia, were criminalized under British rule in India, just as the two-spirit gender common across indigenous nations of the Americas was stigmatized by white European colonizers. From what I read, the Hijra people, it's basically like another term for transgender. But from what I read in a couple of their countries where this is a thing, it's actually legally recognized as a third gender. So all the people complaining that they want their third gender, well, there's places you can go for that. No, I'm not really advocating kicking people out. It's a joke. I have two-spirit friends that don't like identifying as trans because their gender doesn't defy any of their culture's gender norms. They say they are only trans within the context of white supremacy and don't want white ideas to define them. Are you really saying that the term trans is a white idea and part of white supremacy? And white idea. This just sounds so terribly racist and prejudiced towards people based on the fact that they are white, and you may not agree with the... But you know what? You know what's amazing about this? They say white supremacy, but yet the U.S. is already an extremely diverse place. So to say that white ideas are always the dominant just seems disingenuous. And then you've got the girls just here just saying, whoa, I didn't know that. You know what her actual reaction should be? Should be, bitch, I have one arm. And you're really going to come at me with these self-inflicted identity issues? I mean, I know she has white skin, so clearly her struggle doesn't matter as much. But this is somebody that's like, doesn't even have a complete anatomy. And you're going to complain to them about gender and gender presentation and the fact that people might not recognize your gender presentation the way you want them to. The thing that's stupid about that is people, regardless of their gender or sexual orientation, have problems with the way others perceive them. Not everybody in the world is going to perceive you the way you want them to. I believe, I firmly believe we should show everybody respect as long as they show it to us. But the way these people talk, they always generalize in the same way that they don't want their identities generalized. Oh, and it just gets more ridiculous. I have a two-spirit cousin that feels differently, but it's so important to remember that POC communities are not hive minds. So then why are you even bothering to tell us any of this as though it is common knowledge among your community? They're saying, oh, well, this person feels this way, but then this person feels another, and yet they're acting like these identities are have some kind of rule book as to what you can and cannot do. But right here, they're being hypocritical in a sense because they're saying, well, not everybody under these identities agree. And that's great. I'm actually glad they're acknowledging that, but it just frames everything they've said up until now as kind of dumb. Okay, let's see how this is ending. Photo booths free, damn fun. Okay. All you really need to remember is that multiple oppressions multiply each other. So get out your calculator and multiply those oppressions. Every single thing about a person impacts their life in one way or another. No shit, but that applies to everybody, not just queer and trans people. It's always better to ask than to assume, and always be ready to listen and believe. We don't expect everyone to get us. They won't. Just trust us when we tell you our stories. But will you do this? Will you extend the same courtesy to others, or will you always be bitching about the way you believe people perceive you? You can't realistically demand that the world look at you a certain way. It's just not going to happen. Once again, I think, everybody should be free to be themselves and be who they really want to be, so long as they are not actively causing physical harm to another person. But there are people in the world that no matter what you do or say, they're not going to care. In fact, most people probably don't even notice you. A lot of this comes from a place of insecurity where, you'll go out and be in a crowd and you think, oh, these people are looking at me, these people are judging me. But 9 times out of 10, and yes, that's a made up figure, you're not even on their radar. They're not even going to pay attention to you. Thanks for reading. Oh, I feel so much better having come across this. It's actually kind of funny though, because what kind of community do these people hang out in that they come across this type of thing on a daily basis? Like all this two-spirit and all that junk, that is not common. That has to be so rare that people actually legitimately identify as that. I just think that these people put way too much focus on their gender and don't focus enough on being an individual. Let's just see. This is just a transcript. Okay. Joamet Gill is a queer Afro-Cuban storyteller with a degree in social justice and psychology. I'm still amazed that you can have a degree in social justice. Like, what in the world would you do with that? Open a Patreon? Her comics and illustrations straddled the border between personal and political, reality and fantasy, but mostly fantasy, what is and what is possible. The Miami native now lives and makes in Portland, Oregon. Surprise, surprise. And you can follow her adventures here. It's a Tumblr link. I knew it. Oh, man. This is insane. I mean, nobody in their right mind thinks about this all the time. Like, these people put way too much focus on identity and all the possibilities in which they can be looked down upon or marginalized for that. Meanwhile, most people probably don't even think twice about this. All right, well, that's it for now. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.